Now, I told you last week about the failed asylum seeker whose deportation was blocked by do-gooder cabin crew from Air France, who essentially refused to fly him home. Anderson Mayella was allowed to subsequently stay in the UK, where he went on to rape a 15-year-old British girl. Well, here's another one for you. It's been revealed a child rapist is now also allowed to stay in the UK after arguing that being deported would harm his mental health. The guy cannot be named or pictured, so you have to deal with a silhouette, which is pretty handy, I guess, when it comes to public safety. But the Sun newspaper reports he was jailed for attacking a teenage girl, a British girl, and was due to be kicked out of Britain in 2014. He appealed by claiming he could not be treated for depression or PTSD in his native Eritrea in East Africa. But now, in a damning indictment of what a complete doormat for scumbags Britain has become, the appeal has been upheld after a doctor said he would be more likely to kill himself if he returned home. The decision was made despite a security report finding he posed a medium risk to the British public. He was also likely to have been punished for evading national service duty as a teenager back in his home country. So look, just as a reminder, not only do we have a rapist on our hands that we can't get rid of because it might hurt his feelings, he's also a coward too. So let's get the thoughts of my panel. Political commentator Suzanne Evans, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister. Benjamin Butterworth, usually not the kind of guy who would be happy to have this chap roaming the streets of Britain because we can't deport him. You support the ECHR, don't you?
Well, I can confirm I don't like child rapists. I'm glad we can have that
No, but you support the ECHR.
Look, you know, I think this is clearly a mistake to say that someone's mental health will be damaged and that means they can stay in the country. I think, you know, that's slightly ridiculous because I'm sure anybody that goes to prison damages their mental health, but we accept that as a reasonable form of justice, all things considered, for what they've done. So clearly he shouldn't be allowed in this country, but I think to say that you would rip up human rights that protect us as they protect other people, that guarantee so many freedoms, would be a terrible mistake. And
so hang on, so you'd want this guy out of the country, yet you'd still back the ECHR, because it's people like this scumbag who are staying in the country and at times being let free on our streets because of the ECHR. So make your mind up. What is it?
I have made my mind up.
You haven't. You're a walking contradiction.
You know, there are examples where, you know, for example, the ECHR said that prisoners should be entitled to the right to vote while in prison. Now, we chose to ignore that. So we know that we can use our sovereignty to ignore some of these rulings. I think this would be a justified one. But the idea that you rip up the whole playbook of human rights because of one incident where it doesn't sit well would be a total mistake. And let's bear in mind, the kind of rules that are being enforced here were things that Britain stood for, that were exported to a continent. And I think we should be proud of that.
Suzanne Evans?
I'm absolutely sickened by this. Absolutely sickened. You know, we might as well, I think, put up a sign at Dover saying, rapists, welcome to Britain where your rights come first. Because that is, I'm afraid, the kind of situation that we're in now. And I think we should leave the ECHR. I think it really has got to that now. But I think what really gets to me is the reason that this man has been allowed to stay here. He'd be more likely to take his own life if he was returned to his own country. His mental health. That poor teenage girl is out there listening to all this, watching this. She knows what's happening. What about her mental health? Yep. What about her rights? Utterly destroyed.
People like Benjamin don't seem to care about victims of these monsters. It's not an isolated incident. We had one last week. I told the viewers about it on Friday. A guy who was campaigning for better quality of care in migrant detention centres, then ended up being a rapist himself.
Well, I mean, look, I think it's crass and uncalled for to say that you're defending people that do these atrocious crimes. I think this person should be locked up and I think this person should be deported. But the question is about whether you rip up the whole book. There's also another point to this, which is there is no way Rishi Sunak is going to take us out of the ECHR. He's hinted at it for years. All it is politics, and there's no chance, even if he changed his mind remarkably and actually pursued it, that you could do it before a general election.
Sam Lister, Rishi Sunak arguably has a couple of months left. Can he pull a rabbit out of the hat, as in leaving the ECHR, committing to it in an election promise? Will that be enough to save his bacon and the Tories' bacon?
I think it's incredibly difficult because I think he would split his party. He has hinted it, as Benjamin says, he has hinted at it a number of times. Doing it and hinting at it are two very different things. There's a huge rump of the party who are absolutely, fundamentally committed to our membership of the ECHR. And then, obviously, equally as many who are fundamentally opposed to it. So I think he has a real problem, and I think he's unlikely to be able to resolve that anytime soon.
Suzanne Evans, some people would call those Tory MPs committed to the ECHR a bunch of wets.
Yeah, I think I'd be one of those people.
Is that accurate?
To be honest, I
just
think it is. I mean, it's interesting, Sam, you talk about the Conservative Party being split. Frankly, it can't come soon enough. Because the party is utterly divided. You know, so many people who are MPs in Parliament who say they're Conservative MPs, they're not. They're Lib Dems, basically. They're so wet, they're so woolly. There's not a Conservative bone in their body.
You sound like a right-wing Jeremy Corbyn at this point.
Well, that's fine. If that's what I sound like, that's OK. I don't really...
Suzanne, why don't these groups... I've asked many of them whenever I've spoken to them on interviews and so on, why don't a lot of these Tories get it? Why don't they listen to the members, adopt some Conservative values? Not only are they allowing fighting-age males to flood the southern border, they're allowing legal migration. A city the size of Birmingham every 2 years. They can control that, and they don't seem to care.
I think it's all to do with about our political class. There are so many people now who go into politics not because they want what's best for the country. They want to go in because they want what's best for them. They see it as a way to climb the greasy pole, to get accreditation in society, to make a good income, and they want the power and they want the kudos. I honestly think anyone that wants a career in politics should not be allowed to go into politics, because that's not what it's about. But unfortunately, that's what we have. And I think whichever party it is, Tory or Labour, I think it's been allowed to happen. You know, the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, it's always party first, country second. They choose people who are going to absolutely stick with that line. They choose people the way the selection process works. It's all a mess. And that's why we get these people who are wets, who won't stand for anything. They stand for nothing.
So, Sam Lister, where does the future of the Conservative Party lie? Because Reform UK, obviously, polling with record numbers, they've made no secret of the fact that they want to just obliterate the Tories. They don't care about the number of seats they get at the general election. Where do you see the Conservative Party, say, this time next year?
Well, I mean, it entirely depends on the election result, doesn't it? Is it the blue? Is it the blue
wall?
wall? Is it the blue wall that gets wiped out? Is it the red wall? If it's both, then we're in a whole different ballgame, aren't we? But I think, you know, reform has to ask itself, if you want Rwanda to work, if you want deportation flights, if you want to protect the borders, why are you campaigning so hard to allow a Labour government to be in for the next 5 years? I mean, the immigration problem, legal and illegal, is only going to get 10 times worse under Keir Starmer, and that's essentially what you get if you vote Reform.
Well, I think that's nonsense, because both legal and illegal immigration were lower under the last Labour government. A fraction, a third of what they've been in the last couple of years. And actually, Labour had a problem while they were in government with people hiding in trucks, and that problem was pretty clearly resolved. The numbers fell considerably. So they managed to do it, and the equivalent is votes now, and the Tories aren't doing anything. I actually think the government, politicians, need to be far more honest. I agree with high levels of immigration. I think it's good for our economy.
Yeah, what a hypocrite.
And I think politicians...
It's not good for the economy. Let me just stop you there. Latest GDP figures show that GDP per capita, per head, contracted by 0.7% despite uncontrolled mass migration. As I said, a city the size of Birmingham every 2 years. So it's a complete myth that it's good for the economy. And actually, Benjamin, you are a massive hypocrite. You come on this channel week in, week out, complaining about the abuse that Jews get down at the Palestine marches, and yet you say you're happy for uncontrolled mass pro-migration. It's just absurd.
Well, yes, Ben, because I'm not a racist who thinks that everybody who comes to this country has views about Jews like that. Most people in this country that are immigrants aren't from the Middle East at all.
Who else has views about Jews, as we see at Palestine marches?
Well, I mean, the oddity of what you're saying is that most Jews in this country will have come from migrant families in the past generation or two, right? So they are themselves part of the migration. I think that's a good thing. They add to this country. The fact is that I think politicians are being dishonest because they know that we need immigration for our economy, and they're not being honest with the public.
OK, well,
but I agree with the politicians.
I'd argue we don't need them for the economy, as I've just outlined. But Suzanne Evans, Benjamin Butterworth, Sam Lister, thanks very much.